People say you shouldn't listen to critics because opinions on music are subjective. And I disagree. That's exactly why you should listen to critics. That's what you go to a critic for, is to hear their subjective opinion. But there are some things that I've learned as a critic that you should definitely consider when you listen to us. Welcome, metalheads. I'm the host of Heavy Metal Philosophy and writer for Metal Digest, Jon Barbas. Make sure you stick around to the end of the episode for this week's Riff of the Week. Also, I'm going to try out a new segment this week about ridiculous news headlines. But now let's talk about the subject at hand, why you should take what critics say with a grain of salt. Now, I'm a critic. I work for Metal Digest. I put out at least 2 reviews a week. I do reviews on this channel. It would behoove me not to tell you not to listen to critics. Of course, I want you to listen to me. Of course, I want you to read my articles. But I have gained some insights in my rookie year as a writer for an online magazine that I figured I would share with you, and it might illuminate why critics do what they do. Now, when I took on my job at Metal Digest and I started doing reviews, I said to myself, there's one thing that critics do that I'm not going to do. I'm going to do everything in my effort not to do this. Let me tell you a story that'll explain why I feel this way. Longtime listeners to the podcast might remember that I had on the guest Sarah King, who's a tremendous musician, songwriter, singer, guitar player. Well, your boy used to play guitar for her. Well, eventually she moved to New York to pursue her career further, and that was that, but we remained friends. And one day she messaged me and she said, I'm doing an album. I want to record it in Georgia. I'm flying down. Would you play guitar on my album? And I was like, of course I will. So she says, okay, here's the songs, here's the charts with the chords. I want this album to be a bluesy R&B album. Well, that's right in my wheelhouse. You know, I love metal music, and when I play metal, I really like power chords and scale runs. But when I'm not playing metal, I really like to explore my chord voicings more. You know, I don't want to play the standard, what I call cowboy chords, you know, G, C, and D. I want to explore that further, and a lot of times that means playing 7th chords. For those of you who aren't musicians, those are the chords that sound kind of bluesy and R&B, and that's why I say it was right in my wheelhouse. And I was like, perfect, okay. So she sent me the material, I listened to the songs, I looked at the chord structure, and then I wrote my parts with the objective in mind. She wants this to sound like a bluesy R&B album. She flew down to Georgia, we recorded that album, and we were all super happy with the way it sounded. Mission accomplished. She's got a bluesy R&B album called What Happened Last Night. And I'll say, I'm pretty proud of the guitar work I did on that. I'm pretty proud of the choices I made on that album. Sarah won her state's Songwriter of the Year award, and there was a lot of great reviews. It was received very well. And I remember reading one of those reviews, and it was overall a positive review. But one of the things that was said was, this sounds like a bluesy R&B album that you've heard before. There's nothing innovative here. And I hate it when critics do that. Every album can't reinvent the wheel and create this new genre-defying sound. Every band can't be Tool before you ever heard Tool before. Of course, that was the mission. She told me to make it sound like a bluesy R&B album. And we accomplished the mission. We weren't trying to be some prog post-metal band. The artists that made the art did exactly what they wanted to do. And that's why, as a critic, I will never in my review say, this isn't new. This didn't break any new ground. This isn't innovative. Of course, we all love innovative bands. The first time I heard Rivers of Nile, that's why they're one of my favorite bands. The first time I heard Opeth, that's why they're one of my favorite bands. But I also like music inside of the genre that it's trying to do. I like Cannibal Corpse. I like Tribal Gaze. Tribal Gaze does not have to reinvent death metal for it to be good. So you see, with critics, It's not because their opinion is subjective. He could have said the album was bad, and that's just his opinion. That's why you go to critics, to get their opinion. I appreciate that people's opinions are different. No, the problem with critics is they're jaded. And I've learned this over the past year, my rookie year as a online journalist. Y'all, I listen to so many albums. As soon as I finish a writing assignment for Metal Digest, my editor sends me another assignment. Okay, now listen to this one and write a review of this one. And as longtime subscribers know, every Friday, I listen to all the newest releases, and then I break down my top 5 for y'all right on YouTube. So go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube if you want to hear that. So that's a lot of albums that I'm listening to every week, day in and day out. And after a while, you get sort of numb to the dun 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 dun, the horse galloping metal that you hear all the time. Of course, eventually you want to hear something fresh. But I also know that it's not possible for every single band with every single album to reinvent the entire genre. Y'all, sometimes I want my hardcore thrash to sound like hardcore thrash. That's what I want. So as I said, I've made that decision that I will never write in any of my reviews, oh, this isn't innovative, this isn't new, this isn't fresh. And that's a challenge, because sometimes when I'm reviewing things, it does sound derivative, and I have to think of a way to explain that without coming across as that guy that I don't like. And if you're the critic that wrote that review, I don't mean that I don't like you personally. I don't know you. What I mean is, as a metaphor, as a symbol, I don't like that. I don't like that move that critics do. And here's another thing about critics that I've learned. And I've always kind of subconsciously known this, but it's only now that I've done the job that I sort of get it fully. Critics are writers. And writers are a special kind of artist. They're very different than painters or musicians. It's a different craft. When a critic's writing a review of the album, they're not just giving you their opinion on the music, they're also trying to write something. It's a form of art, and all writers have their literary heroes. They have the things that their heroes did as far as penmanship and as a wordsmith that they admire and they want to emulate. So a lot of writers write in such a way that's, for lack of a better term, writery. They can't just say, oh, I didn't enjoy this album. First of all, that's boring. You would stop reading that author if that's as simple as they put it. Why didn't you enjoy the album? But also it goes against their ego as an artist, as a writer. So really I found that there's two kinds of ways that people critique art. You've got your writer types that want to eloquently eviscerate anything that doesn't meet the highest brow, most Shakespearean standards. These are the kind of people that will never enjoy a Michael Bay movie and will only enjoy Martin Scorsese movies. And speaking of movies, that leads me to the other type of person. This is the type of person that has no taste at all. This is the type of person that they mistake a movie that has good and memorable scenes with a good film. They mistake an album that has a couple of riffs that really make you want to bang your head with a cohesive artistic offering that's a consistent album all the way through. A good example of this is the movie Step Brothers. If you ask a lot of people what their favorite comedy is, a lot of them will say Step Brothers. It's a great movie. No, it's not. What Step Brothers is a collection of hilarious scenes. The first time I saw that guy drag his ball sack across his drums, of course, I laughed really hard. That is a very funny scene. But as a film, that movie is terrible. The character development is stupid. The second half of the film is a completely different movie from the first half of the film, and all of everybody's favorite scenes are from the first half of the film. The second half of the film is completely nonsensical. That movie sucks as a movie, but yes, it was funny. And because it was funny, people love it. But just because an album has a handful of good riffs does not mean that the overall album is a good album. And that's the job of a critic. I've learned a couple of things as I've been a critic. And one of the main things I've learned is to analyze what I'm critiquing a little bit more deeply than the way it makes me feel. And a lot of that is due to necessity. I have to write several articles a week, and I can't write the same thing every time. Look, I'm not always inspired. And also, sometimes the bands aren't really giving me something to write about. But can I go to my editor and be like, I got nothing, y'all, and just not write the article? Of course not. I've got a job to do. So I write about it, and I have to listen to it, and I have to think about it, and I have to say to myself, what am I going to say in this article? I need to find something. And now I've listened to it so many times that I can pinpoint exactly what's annoying me. Is it the production? Is it the mix? Is it the hi-hat choices of the drummer? These are things that I normally didn't think about, even as a musician crafting music. When we were recording that album, or the album we recorded before that, or albums I've done with other bands, we didn't think, what are we gonna say about this after we're done? We just tried to make the best art that we could. But when I need to describe to you what the guitar sounds like, that changes the way I listen to the music. In some ways, it kind of sucks that I've made a job about it, but in some ways, it's made it so much better. Now I'm listening for more things than, does this make me want to headbang or not? Even though that remains still the most important factor. Yoda, I'm recording a podcast. And with that said, I hope I haven't dissuaded you from reading my articles or listening to the podcast. I really want you to enjoy it. I just hope that I've sort of illuminated what critics have to offer and what their thought process is and how that affects their work. Hopefully that will help you better understand what we do and the value of what we offer, but more importantly, it will allow you to get more value out of the reviews, because now you know it's not just our subjective opinion, it's the nature of the analysis itself. And now that that's said, let's do the new segment that I talked about at the beginning of the video, the ridiculous headline of the week, followed by the riff of the week. All right, this headline is from XXL Magazine, and it says, Rick Ross won't ride in Teslas because he's afraid they will automatically drive him to the police. Quote, I've always had in the back of my mind, the government could tap into the brain of the car. Okay, where's Rick? Nah, bring him in for questioning. Rick Ross was a security guard in prison before he became a rapper. You literally are the police. What, are you scared that the car is going to take you back where you came from? Or are we not talking about the fact that you stole your name from the actual drug dealer Rick Ross and you're just an entertainer? Listen, that Everyday I'm Hustling song, that song rules. I love that song. He is a very talented rapper, but to pretend like he's the criminal that his persona is, come on y'all, we see right through that. The internet's a thing. We know your backstory. Now, if there's one thing I know about metalheads is we do not tolerate inauthenticity. I like rap casually. I can't really say that I'm deep in the rap world. So I would love it if somebody listening to this who actually is deep into the rap world can explain to me, is there a segment of the rap world that's like, no, we don't play that inauthentic shit either? Or is it okay because it's a hustle and every day he's hustling? I'd love to know. Tell me in the comments. Now let's do the riff of the week. Since I've dissented from my fellow critics, this week's riff of the week will be Machine Head, clenching the fists of dissent. Let me know what you think about the episode. All my links are in the description below. If you're on YouTube, click right here because YouTube's letting you know which video you should watch next. That really helps. But most importantly, read philosophy, listen to metal. I love you.